Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm here with Ruth Pearce, and we're going to talk about character strength. Now, when we set this up, we did say it was going to be in a post-pandemic world, but we're still not. We're still. I think certainly from where I sit in the UK, there's still a. We're not quite so locked down, but there is an element of
behavior modification.
Yes. But before we get into that, just give us a whiz through in terms of your journey, because you've got a really interesting background about how you could talk about character strength.
Ah, okay. Yeah, well, how long have you got, Tim? Because my journey can be like 30 seconds or, 3 hours, depending on what we're focusing on. I actually started out as an economist in the UK. Some people will be able to tell that I have a British accent. I live in the US now.
I noticed your accent was, yes.
Not your typical North Carolinian accent. So I've actually lived in the US since 1995, and I'll get to that story in a moment, because there's a reason why I still have quite a strong British accent. Although, of course, a lot of British people think I sound mid-Atlantic. So, so I started out as an economist, was not a happy camper. I had a master's in economic theory, and while I find the topic fascinating, I didn't really particularly enjoy working in it. And I took a computer aptitude test for an organization that has been renamed many times, but at the time it was called Business Information Systems, BIS. And they had their own aptitude test. So it didn't matter what degree you'd done or anything like that. You went into the aptitude test, and if you passed, then they were interested in training you. And so I went into computing. And that suited me a lot better. It was a lot more sort of predictable than economic theory had been. And then I was sent to the US on a pilot program where we were testing with a bank over in New York. And for one reason or another that I won't go into, my project manager had to go home to the UK. And the company was faced with a dilemma, which was, do we bring in a new project manager who's got no relationship with the client? Or do we take this technology person who's got no project management experience, but they do have a relationship with the client, make them the project manager, and send another technology person over? And they went with option B. And so, as so often happens, thank you. As so often happens, I became a project manager through no fault of my own. I was just sitting in the right place at the right time. And they said, you start doing project management, whatever that meant. And for the next 25 years, I spent time finding out what project management is. But in particular, I was fascinated by team building and team engagement. And I have, in the course of my career, just coincidentally taken over several projects that were officially regarded as in trouble or, off the rails or whatever. I've never found them to be that, because the people are usually amazing, and give them some wiggle room and they will get things back on track. But that's been my career, is can you come in here and work with this team, because we're having a bit of a struggle. And then in the mid 2010s, I went through an uncharacteristic phase of depression. And I say uncharacteristic because I've struggled all my life with anxiety, but not particularly with depression. That was my mother's particular thing to bear. And I got up one morning, and of course people say, you can go and see a therapist, maybe you want to take medication, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I've seen therapists for my anxiety over the years, and I don't want to get stuck in the how did I get here? I don't want to get stuck in exploring that it's understandable that I'm depressed because my father had OCD and yada, yada, yada. So I tried to think of, I wanted to focus on something that would help me see all the things that are good. I was like, objectively, I could see, I have a roof over my head. I lived in a great place. I had a good family, good husband, great career, all of that. There were a lot of things going my way, and I wanted to appreciate them more. So I Googled positive psychology.
Right.
And two things came up. One was a fairly cost-effective program, year-long program, where there were 2 live week-long study periods in a place really close to where I was living at the time. Or I could go for the $70,000 master's in applied positive psychology at UPenn, which I would love to do. So if any of the audience is out there looking for people to sponsor on that program, I'm your girl, I want to do it. But I couldn't justify that kind of expense or even raise that kind of money. So I went and did the certificate. And there were lots of amazing things in that certificate program. But the one I walked away with, in love with, was VIA Character Strengths. So the VIA Institute on Character is based in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a nonprofit. And they've actually done research into what makes us at our best and identified these 24 character strengths that are universal. Doesn't matter where you're from, what your religion is, they're recognizable and seen as positive qualities. And I took that to the team that I was working with at the time and had the most amazing experience with a team of 110 people. And so I've been sold. I then cyber stalked their institute and till they gave me a job and all of that. So everything I do now has the character strengths integrated into it, because it is so empowering and I don't know. The word that comes to mind is just a life force. And I do just want to tell the story of why I still have my British accent. When I lived in New York in 1995, after the pilot program, I was invited to actually transfer to New York and work there. The first day in New York, I went looking for something to eat, and I was vegetarian. I am still vegetarian. And at that time in New York, vegetarianism was a bit like having two heads and horns. So I went into this deli and looked at the list of all the sandwiches, and I was like, can I just have Swiss cheese and tomato on a hero? And the guy said, say that again. And I said, I'd like Swiss cheese and tomato and some mustard on a hero. And he said, if you say tomato every time you come in and order something, I will take 25 cents off the cost of your sandwich. I ate there for 3 years, pretty much every day, having different things each day. And he was true to his word. I got 25 cents off the cost of my sandwich, which at the time, making the money I was not insignificant. I could ride the subway with that. And so he drilled into me, keep your accent, don't try and assimilate. Be who you are. And that was a great learning from a deli guy. I wish I knew his name because I would be able to attribute that to him. So sorry, that was the 2-hour version. Sorry.
Oh no, it was interesting. Well, I found it interesting anyway. I mean, I think part of this is actually learning about the person. But I was sitting here, just before 20 minutes before we come on, and I'm thinking, right, because we actually spoke and did a prep on this back on the 23rd of June. So I'm going through this and I'm thinking, I'm thinking this is going to be really great, because actually all the things that you said that I've written down are really interesting, because character strength is. But what? Tell me, for the lay person like me, what do you define as character strength?
So I love that question, Tim, because we can jump right in and forget to sort of define and put boundaries around this. So we have many kinds of strengths, skills, things that we learn to do well. Those are strengths. We have talents, those things that it doesn't seem to matter what we do, we seem to be able to turn our hand to something. And that's a strength that we have. We have other kinds of strengths, like being able to, sort of plug through the day and put resilience out into the world. And character strengths, the research shows, are the sort of positive attributes of our personality. Now, there are multiple strengths assessments out there, and even things that are termed as kind of character strengths assessments. The thing I love about the VIA character strengths is that they're fully researched. There's over 700 independent studies of them, whereas many of the others, fabulous work, very interesting, very useful, very often proprietorial. And so only the organization that presents them has done the research. So it's been independently verified. And what we've discovered is there are these 24 attributes like love and curiosity and humility and appreciation of beauty and excellence that we all recognize. And when we engage them, understand them and engage them actively, we feel better in whatever we're doing. And that could be being a cleaner in a hospital. Now, thank goodness someone wants to be a cleaner in a hospital. I know I don't. But there was a study done, for example, where people who felt they were engaging their top character strengths, because you can take a free survey on the website and get your ranking from 1 to 24. We all have access to all 24 strengths, which is another thing that I really love. Our top ones are the ones that are sort of fairly automatic. We really don't have to think too much about them. The ones at the bottom are usually a bit more of a reach, and actually that's very relevant to COVID. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But there was this study done of hospital workers, and the hospital workers who felt that they were engaging their top strengths as cleaners of the hospital felt like part of the care team.
Right.
Because they were the ones that were exhibiting kindness and curiosity about the patients. They were very often the only person that the patient saw regularly, frequently, and multiple days in a row, you know, because nurses and doctors would come and go off shift. And so they would build relationships with the patients and build some continuity. And then the ones who were not really engaging their character strengths, maybe their character strengths were, you know, something entirely different. They saw it as just a job. I have to come to work in order to earn the money to put food on the table, you know. And so there was a big distinction between those people in a job that many of us would be like, you know, I don't want to mop up blood and other things. So, and that to me is really, really important, because the message that I took from that, and from the many other studies I've looked at since, is that whatever we're doing, we can put ourselves in a position to be the best of ourselves in that moment, even if it's a really crappy moment. Excuse my French. So, and that might bring us back to COVID, I think, Tim.
Right. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about previously was about how character strength gave engagement in the workplace. It brings teams to work together. It gives mindfulness. So how does that all work? Because that's just words.
Yes. So there are multiple studies that show, ranging from studies that Gallup has done to, you know, sort of more esoteric research studies, that show that people, like I gave that example of the hospital workers, people who know their character strengths. So they've taken the assessment and they know which of their strengths are their top strengths, their go-to strengths, are 9 times more likely to feel engaged at work, right, or to report high levels of well-being at work. People who know that strength ranking and have focused some attention on engaging and learning about the strengths are 18 times more likely to feel a connection to what they're doing in work. So a higher sense of well-being and this sense of engagement. And engagement to the employer or to the organization looks like people who go above and beyond. You know, they don't just do their job, clock watch and go home. They are more likely to be innovative and creative and work with other people to get stuff done and all of that. The amazing statistic to me is that people who know their strengths get to work with their strengths, and who are supported by team and particularly management in engaging their strengths in the workplace, are 29 times more likely to report high levels of well-being at work, and 4 times more likely to describe their work as a calling. So they're not just doing it as a job to put food on the table, they're actually driven to actually do this role. And that to me was a huge eye-opener coming to the teams thing, because when I discovered these via character strengths, and I became one of those people at work that's like, what course is she on at the moment? You know, because I would show up and say, hey guys, I've got this to share, and if you're interested, we'll do it. We had a team of 110 people, and 85 people voluntarily took their strengths assessment, the free assessment. And then we explored, what does that mean? You know, what strengths show up that lots of people share these top strengths in the team. Which ones were more rare? Out of 110 people, we had one person who had a top 5 strength of humor.
Right.
Now, can you imagine being that person? You know, it's like you tell a joke, no one gets it. You're trying to be playful, people think you're being silly. You know, they don't appreciate what you're trying to do. And so having that awareness changed the dynamic of the team, because we could make space for these strengths that were a little more unusual. And we need a little bit of all of them. So it helped to build this sort of team camaraderie and an appreciation for one another that helped people work more effectively together, because they started seeing some of the most annoying qualities we started to realize were their top strengths, maybe used inappropriately or used in a way that we didn't recognize. And that when we could talk this language of, oh, you know what, they're very high in gratitude. There was this one guy he was always saying, I know things are miserable and it's really hard at the moment, but we really should be grateful. You know, it could be a lot worse. And people would get to the point, you know, they wanted to smack him around the head, because it's like, their day's been horrible. But then he came up with this idea, Mondays were a tough day. People didn't want to, it was like being back in school. You know, people didn't want to come into the office. He implemented off his own back a gratitude practice where we started Monday morning walking around thanking everyone for coming in. And it was a bit of a joke. We had a bit of a laugh, thanks for being here. Thanks for bothering. You could have made an excuse and taken the day off. But it actually worked in boosting people's sense of belonging and appreciation, and that it mattered that you showed up. It didn't matter what your role was on the team. We noticed you were there. And he created that. And it went on for about 6 weeks. And then we had established that sense of belonging and connection and everything. We didn't need it anymore. But he helped us over a hump by using his top strength in a way that none of us would have thought to do. So it really helps people to be seen and feel seen and to see others in a new and positive way. And it's not about ignoring gaps. We challenged people to fill gaps, learn new skills, all of that kind of stuff. But if you're engaging their top strengths, the things that come naturally, they're more likely to go the extra mile. They're engaged. So what do I need in order to be more effective in this job? I really need a training course in this, or I need mentoring in that, or whatever. They're much more likely to want to do that than if you tap them on the shoulder and say, there's a big gap in your performance. This is your weakness. Go and get some training on it. That's kind of insulting because you're not appreciating what's already there and what they already bring to the table.
So, here we are sitting in October 2021. We've been through the pandemic. We've been through the massive working from home experiment, and the pendulum swung a long way in terms of a lot of people are working from home. There's a debate now about whether we're going to go back to the office. Some people are, some people are not. There's a discussion about the grand resignation, which people are going, well, I'm not going back to the office because of whatever. How much do you think that the pendulum is going to swing, and how much can we use character strength now as something that can enable and empower and do all those wonderful things to the workforce that we want to happen?
Well, I think it's already happening. One of the things I discussed, so I might not be clear that I don't have any specific research. It's too soon in relation to COVID and the timing of COVID to have research around what the character strengths have done. But one of the things that shows up a lot in character strengths is that strengths like self-regulation and humility and prudence, so planning and being careful and being consistent, they tend around the world not to be reported as high strengths. So if you're someone who comes out number one in self-regulation, which I can tell you is not me, then you're a bit of a unicorn. But one of the things that COVID did was it pushed us into having to engage those strengths. You couldn't even go to the grocery store, even if you had the resources to pop into a grocery store and buy whatever you want, or the corner store. You weren't free to do that anymore. Maybe you were in lockdown, you at least had to mask up, you probably had to hand sanitize, all of these things. So everything took more planning and more regulation. You had to have masks ready and available, all of those kind of things. So we engaged strengths that we've not engaged before. We also engaged perspective, because one of the challenges to letting people work from home has been this common perception that if you let them stay home, they will goof off, and they won't get the work done. Well, now we have a new perspective because we were forced to put them in that position. And of course, it's true of some people, but they're probably the ones who goof off in the office as well. It isn't necessarily about working from home. Some people know that they don't work well from home, or that their environment at home is not a good one because they've got 3 little children that, are climbing over them all the time. So we've learned that we need to trust people to figure out how to make it work and what resources they need in order to do that. So we've had a big learning. So that's learning and curiosity. We had to try something else. We had to be adaptable. And we've learned from that there are more ways to skin a cat than make everyone show up in the office every day. So I think what we're going to see is a rapid change in what was probably already, people were moving towards, I can work from home, or maybe I work from home 2 days a week. I can live in this more remote place. We've seen in the US that people have moved out of the cities during COVID because now they can work remotely and stuff like that. So I think we're going to see a continuation of that as people find the balance. Where is the balance? I have colleagues who have to go into the office because the kind of work they do is white glove, hands on. Client expects to be across the table from them. So they need to do a certain amount of that. Maybe that will change over time. Maybe it'll be seen to be white glove, to be, on a high quality video call. I don't know. But, and yes, Renata, bravery to survive those times. And bravery is one of my favorite strengths because for a long time, I didn't think I had it. And, and then, because I'm so anxious, you see, so I was like, you can't be anxious and brave. Well, it turns out you can, and you actually have to be brave, because bravery is being uncomfortable and doing it anyway. So we've gone through an extremely, and are still going through, an extremely uncomfortable period. I happen to know that Renata's in Brazil. Whatever has happened in Europe and America, Brazil has been 10 times as challenging. And yeah, that bravery to keep going. You know, the conversations I've had with people where it's like, I just want to curl up and pull the covers over my head, but they don't. They do it for their children. They do it because it's important to keep going, whatever it is. Those character strengths have already been engaged in a new and varied way. That's my opinion of the last year. And that has opened up people to what they can do going forward with them, you know, and how they can be their best selves. What does being their best self look like? Changing their priorities around, you know, is it working? Is it having a certain income? You know, what's the priority? Thank you, Renata. So it's, I think we're already in that process. What would be fantastic is, and Lee's the humor guy, and Lee's on, hi Lee. What would be fantastic is if we can jump on this and push it forward, you know, and to actually leverage what's already happened to get people to be more aware, because 70% of people don't even know what their strengths are. Whether it be character strengths or skills or whatever, they're actually blind to what they bring to the table. So, and Lee is a humor guy in the face of some, you know, he's had some significant challenges in the last year. I hope he doesn't mind. He's been sharing that publicly, so it should be fine. And one of the things that is just so amazing about him is it's the yes and, you know, it's like, this over here is horrible and challenging and depressing. And I can see the humor in this thing. You know, I
did an interview on improv comedy. Yes and thing, which is part of improv, which is rather than keep saying, just I'm explaining for if there's anybody watching this who don't understand, you know, usually what we do when someone says, can we do that? I go, nah, that won't work. But with improv, you always go yes and.
From the most ridiculous things. I mean, the prompts might be, you know, I landed on the roof in my spaceship this morning. What did you do? Oh, yes, and you know, and it's like, and you have to
let's build a garden. Yes, and let's put a fence around it.
Let's take your spaceship and we'll go to Mars this afternoon or whatever it might be. And I use it a lot in coaching and with people who have anxiety. Is that yes and? It's like, yeah, you feel like crap and, or yes, this is daunting to you and then we can build the character strengths in there as well. As you know, I happen to know that your top strength is whatever it is. How will that help you move through this difficult time or take the next step or whatever it is? And it's really, really empowering.
Ruth, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I mean, it's an amazing subject. I've done things with people similar to you, where you work out what people are like, and then you go, well, this task was really suited to you, and they go, yeah, I'll do that. And then you know, I've been in situations because I'm a classic introvert.
Me too.
And so, you know, I'm not very good at coming up with solutions in meetings, and you get all the extroverts to do it. And then what happens is that I'm driving home and I come up with an even better solution to it.
Have you stolen my story? Because that actually happened to me. And
because it's classic me, which is
classic. It's classic introvert. So I had a story where I was asked to go to a problem-solving session, and typically when we had these off-site problem-solving sessions, they would tell us what it was going to be about ahead of time. But in this instance, they didn't tell us until the day, because they wanted our fresh, you know, off-the-cuff ideas. Well, I didn't have any fresh off-the-cuff ideas because I don't process that way. And my boss came and said he was disappointed because I didn't have anything to say all day. And I was like, well, I was disappointed too, because you didn't give me a heads up as to what we might be thinking about. And I also consult other people.
Requirement.
Yeah. So anyway, well, it's been a pleasure, Tim. Thank you very much. And,
thank you. And thank you to Renata, Curtis, Lee. Have I got everybody there for the contributions as well?
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate you showing up.
Thanks for showing bravery.
Yes. All right. Thanks very much, Tim. This was great.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.